I get my inspiration from different aspects, so farmers and producers. But I guess my main influence comes from just the natural world and the environment and growing produce. It kind of gives me a reason to be cooking.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Having a greater connection with the land, the environment, and our impact on it has always been a driving force behind the culinary career of Jo Barrett. But education, learning, and sharing knowledge have been part of the foundation to let her explore what's possible. With more time on her hands thanks to the pandemic, Jo Barrett delved into the world of publishing to create a bespoke food title to empower cooks to try new methods and techniques. And her salami issue is selling like hotcakes. Jo, you're one of Australia's best chefs, but now you've become a publisher, releasing Have a Go and the fifth issue, focusing on salami. How did it all come about?
I guess it was just a natural progression from doing things like cheese. We try and follow a bit of a theme. So we do a dairy category, a grain category, something around vegetables, and then a protein. And I think salami, being in the cooler months, was a great issue to tackle. And I was a little bit hesitant because there is a bit of gear involved, how well it was going to go and how it was going to be received. But it's actually been probably the best issue that we've done so far. So we're really happy with salami.
Well, it's an area that you've actually had interest in for quite a while. Tell us when you first started getting interested in making your own charcuterie.
Well, at Oak Ridge, we were practicing whole animal butchery, and I guess it's just a natural progression when you're doing something like that. You always have those cuts of meat that are more well suited to making salamis and for curing. And we were a bit unsure. It's something that I had done at culinary school. We'd done a whole kind of topic on charcuterie, which was really fun in Canada. And then like anyone kind of starting out, and I guess this is where Have a Go has kind of come from, but you always get that fear that you might kill someone when you're fermenting meat or fermenting dairy. And we definitely had that feeling when we started making our own charcuterie at Oak Ridge. So we spoke to Peter Booth, who wrote the Charcuterie Diary, and he came in and did a masterclass with us, which completely changed the world of charcuterie for us, and was really beneficial because we just from there grew a huge charcuterie program and gained a lot of confidence around fermenting and curing meat.
Well, take us back to the early days when you first started. Were there a few hiccups and a few errors that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I guess there's all those little neat tricks that no one, when you're kind of doing it on your own, you don't know. And there's some things that make it a lot easier, like pricking the end of a sausage, or you don't get a giant air bubble, or how you fold down a casing, or exploding sausages. I think the first time we made blood sausage, it was an absolute mess because it's quite a runny mixture. Even just trying to secure some of the meats was really hard. And I think when you aren't doing whole animal butchery and you're seeking out, having a go at making salami or, making lonza and things like that, trying to find a really good source of meat was a bit difficult. Whereas I think now there's a lot more awareness around, where meat's coming from and the quality of it. So I think we've done every mistake under the sun, but it does lead you to know what you're doing, I guess, at this point.
What do you need from a pig to make great charcuterie? Is there a particular breed or size or fat content that you're looking for?
I always look for like a really nice fat marbling. The marbling and fat kind of ratio to lean meat is really important. So you get really nice mouth feel where it's like melt in your mouth. The fat adds a lot of flavour as well. So you're not after just lean meat, whereas, usually you're doing that when you're cooking. So having, good fat ratio is really good. It also means that pig has had a really nice life if it's going all the way through its fat, like all the way through its meat. And I always look at what that pig has been eating and how it's been raised as well.
What's some of the different types of charcuterie that you've made over the years, and what's been a real standout for you?
I guess when we started, I really wanted to make mortadella, just that, the one that you buy in the supermarket and you kind of like, how do people make that? That was really intriguing to me, and the texture that you can get from that. And it's quite a hard thing to make when you're starting out. So having the progression through making cured meats, like whole muscle cuts, and then transitioning into mincing meat, learning about fat ratios, and then the day that we made mortadella was really exciting. It started off chewy. It wasn't very nice, but then as we kind of perfected how to do it and we tried smoking it and poaching it and different techniques, it's probably been one of the most rewarding charcuterie to make. You don't age it. It's more of a kind of cooked type of charcuterie. It still falls under that category, but really fun because you can do so many different flavor profiles and like I said, smoking it gives it a completely different texture and flavor profile. So that's been one that has been unreal to make.
Can you take us through the process of making mortadella and what it takes to create that amazing texture?
So instead of mincing meat, you actually make a farce, and instead of stuffing it into so example, for salami, you mince meat and then stuff it into a casing. With mortadella, we were stuffing it into a bung, which is a sheep's stomach or a cow's stomach, and you make a farce. And the key with it is adding in ice blocks so it doesn't get too hot, and it emulsifies the fat and the meat. And then you hand dice fat and blanch it, and then you can put olives, and then you fill the bung and then hang it for a night. And then we found we got the best results when we smoked it to the right temperature and then chill it down. And it gets that amazing gelatinous feeling. And it's just a really great carrier for flavour. So we were flavouring it with mountain pepper and then incorporating a few different meats like kangaroo and emu.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And then we made like the typical little brioche, and it was pretty good.
Tell us about when you were young. What lured you to a career in hospitality?
I think it's all aspects of hospitality that I enjoy, and how diverse it is. Like I really enjoy the cooking aspect, the creativity, but I like the feeling of hard work. So, and cooking for people, of course, that's food brings people together and it's something we all have in common. So yeah, I guess it started off as the cooking thing, and then as I got more involved in the industry, I realised there's just such a vast array of things to do and places to go with food. So I really enjoy that now, but at the start it was just cooking and creating.
What's been some of the main influences over your career that have helped shape and led you down the path that you're on?
I think at the beginning it was probably growing food with my family and my grandparents. They were really good cooks and cooked everything from scratch, which was really, really fun as a kid. And then I guess I moved more into a technical stage of cooking, and I really admired my head chef on my apprenticeship. And then now that I probably have a bit clearer decision, I get my inspiration from different aspects. So farmers and producers, Joost and Matt have had a massive influence on, what I do with cooking and what's possible within, especially the sustainable aspect of it. But I guess my main influence comes from just the natural world and the environment and growing produce. It kind of gives me a reason to be cooking.
Tell us about the approach that you have adopted with the ethical, sustainable sort of approach to your cookery and connection with producers. How much has it changed you delving into that world?
I think it's always been, in my mind about where food comes from. And I guess when you're a young chef and you're trying to find, what your signature is or what you're defined as, there was nothing at the time that was really environmental based or sustainability based. And I guess I was just young and the internet wasn't as big and social media wasn't around to kind of seek out people doing things around sustainability. And now I know that it's possible to be cooking and do it in a really ethical way. So I think that has been a really nice thing to know that you can follow your beliefs. It is possible if you stick to what you believe in, that you can do that in your career as well. And food and cooking is no different. We can actually have a massive impact on the environment and climate through food. It's probably one of the biggest drivers in what's happening in the world today and with the environment. Food production is a massive thing and we all eat, and I think we have become a little bit disconnected with that. So knowing that it's possible to make a change by cooking and being involved in food, I find quite empowering.
You've been living in a house in the middle of Melbourne CBD for the last year with on show for everyone and cooking for people, a self-sustaining house. And tell us about the project and what you've been doing.
Yeah, so we've been involved, Matt, Yost and I, in Future Food System. So it is a house that grows all its own food and produces all its own power. And it's to show what a person can be capable of doing in an urban environment. I think there's like a big misconception that if you wanted to grow your own food and you want to make a difference in the world, that you have to be living on a farm. And I mean, I definitely thought that as well at one point. But we want to show that no matter where you're living, you could be growing food. And it's kind of, I guess, the idea is to spark and empower people, especially a younger generation, that you are a part of an ecosystem and you're a part of a food system, and that by growing your own food, or at least one thing, you can have an influence on a greater picture. I think people have become quite disconnected with the food system and think that, someone else is just producing the food and it's just going to arrive, and you have lost track of what seasonality is. And I don't think that is anyone's fault. It's just maybe regaining a little power over what you're putting into your body and what you're consuming, and that you're a part of an ecosystem, and that's what the house is. So there's no waste, and our waste that we produce goes back into the building, and it's kind of replicating what nature is. So we've got all of our waste goes into a biodigester, which is same as like a cow's stomach. So it ferments and then produces methane, which is a natural process of fermentation. And then that methane comes off and we can cook on that flame. So it's a complete closed loop. And then we've got aquaponics systems. So we're growing fish. So we don't think that people necessarily need to change the way they eat, but we could be taking the pressure off our oceans by farming fish in our house. So we've got barramundi, rainbow trout, and yabbies, and we're just about to introduce Murray cod, and that is producing our food, our fish, but also on our grow bed on top, we're producing all our leafy greens. And we catch our own water and grow oats and grains. We're not missing out, like we're not growing any wheat or sugar, so we rely on bees for a sweetener, for honey. But we just want to show that, even if you're living in the middle of Melbourne CBD, you can create an ecosystem.
Tell us about some of the surprises and successes that you've had along the way.
Oh, well, we have had quite an experience. I think, aquaponics, like farming fish, has been a real eye-opener. There's been times, so we've got two aquaponics systems. One's on the base when you first walk in. It's sitting next to a mushroom, which grows 7 varieties of mushrooms over 46 buckets. And then upstairs, we've got another aquaponics system, which it's probably about three stories, or, a double-story house. So the aquaponics system upstairs has rainbow trout and yabbies, and that has been the bane of my existence. I love them. And we've been growing these fish since they were fingerling. But when we first got them, they were tiny, probably the size of a thumb. And one of the fish got caught in the overflow valve, and the whole thing overflowed to the point where it was an internal water feature. So I've definitely learnt how to stay on top of problems before they kind of explode and you can't go back. I mean, even last week with the warming temperatures coming into spring, we almost had algae growing in the system, which is not ideal. So had to empty the whole system out and refill it, and learning how to test water. And it's been a massive learning experience. We lost all our bees at one point because someone sprayed a herbicide in the city, and that was pretty sad. So that was a real eye-opener of one thing changing in an environment and a whole, ecosystem of bees got wiped out. They've recovered now, thank goodness. Yeah, and then obviously cooking for 14 people in our dining room has been another whole aspect to living in a house in Fed Square.
Well, tell us about the cooking aspect. You had welcomed 14 guests into essentially your home and cooked all of the things that you were growing or in that home. Well, what was the menu like, and what was that experience like?
It's like hosting a dinner party at home. So usually in a restaurant you have front of house to kind of check the bathrooms and make sure everything's nice and clean. And it was just Matt, Louise, Daly, and Yost and myself. And I think we probably undershot the mark a bit about the amount of work it was going to be. So we started off doing 5 services a week of 14 people, and that just put a huge demand on what we're growing in the house, because we also still want it to look pretty good, because we want it to be an example of what you can be doing. So yeah, we were just running around like headless chickens, really trying to cook food, but we're also hosting people, and we do a beverage pairing. So it was a lot of work, and I don't think, you're living in the city and people just pop in and walk up the stairs and they're like, what is this? And you're trying to prep and you're trying to be polite, and it was just a bit overwhelming. So we have learnt to execute things a bit better and work sustainably as well. So we've cut down how many dinners we're doing, and now everything's coming from the house as we just prep the menu with whatever we have growing, and we probably serve 8 to 10 dishes. And overcoming hurdles like not using wheat and no refined sugar, and just really being creative and putting your cooking skills to the test and maximizing what an ingredient is good for and how you use that to create different textures and flavors. Is like my cooking definitely has grown from this experience.
Were there any ingredients or dishes that you missed living this lifestyle?
I think there was probably one day when we first started trying to come up with a dessert, and I was like, what the fuck am I going to do with this without having sugar? Like, everything was just tasting like honey, and it was really stressful. People were paying a lot of money to come and have this experience. Like, the time the project wasn't funded by anyone. It was by Yost and Yost's mum and Jenny, and I thought, oh my God, they're going to come and just have a shocking dessert and everything's going to taste the same. And then I think we discovered tiger nuts, which is a tuber that is a weed that grows at the base of a grass. It's quite common. It originates in Africa and South Africa, and having it here, growing in Fed Square was pretty crazy. So I think overcoming refined sugar, but it's amazing now. Your palate changes completely, and you just taste what ingredients really are. And honey, I've always thought honey was really special, but even more so now, just what that ingredient means for more textural stuff than just adding sweetness.
You've always had amazing connections with producers. Do you have any stories of pork producers and being on the farm and the connections made there?
Yeah, Lauren from Bundarra Berkshires is a massive inspiration. When we first started this project, she rang me and she's like, I've been thinking about getting a biodigester for the farm because all of the manure can go into that, and then they want it to power the abattoir, and they're off grid and they're trying to grow grain. And it's not just in restaurants, but it's these primary producers who have the foresight to be doing that. It's not even just about raising, animals on pasture and doing the right thing by that. It's kind of thinking about what waste products they're also producing that aren't necessarily waste, but could be going to power something like that, like biogas. So in Asia, it's quite common to be using things like that. Just in Australia, we haven't really adopted those ideas, but it's definitely happening because there's another dairy farm on the peninsula who are looking into using biodigesters. And yeah, I think it's really exciting, even though I know we are going through a crappy time at the moment, but it is really exciting because we also have the time to really reconsider what we're doing and how we're doing it and what we want to be doing.
What sort of impact has living in this house had on you moving forward?
I think there's no more excuses. Sometimes, you would revert back to things that will, are crowd pleasers, or maybe you think, oh, look, I can't compost, or I have to use cling wrap, things like that you just revert to because it's easy. But we kind of have pushed through that really difficult part, and now we're doing there is no excuse part. Like we're an example of that you can do it, and it's just about changing the way that you think, really, and that's probably the hardest thing, because it is hard to change your habits, but it is possible. So I think even going, eventually we'll go back to cooking at a bigger restaurant. And I'm looking forward to having the experience of putting what I've learnt to the test on a larger scale, because I think there is a bit of like, oh, it's okay for you because you're only cooking for 14 people. But we were doing a lot of this kind of stuff at Oak Ridge and we were cooking for 120 people. But I think now I'd probably reconsider how much sugar I use in food, how much wheat, just from a flavour point of view, not necessarily a health point of view, because I think it's nice to eat out and indulge, but you don't necessarily need it for things to taste good.
Salami is issue 5 of Have a Go, but how did you become a publisher during this time?
I think, the blessing of having a bit of time. So COVID hit, and I wanted to write a cookbook, but I also really love the artistry behind food production and cooking, and was really torn between producing something that actually is technically works, especially because most of the kind of cooking I do is cheese making and bread making and salami, charcuterie. So they're really artisan skilled things. So I did want people to benefit from that and share what I have learnt. So Have a Go really stemmed from wanting to give a recipe justice. And it was when we were just shooting another issue this week. And I was like, wow, when you write a cookbook and, you look through cookbooks, because I read a lot, you get to see all the finished products, and they're beautiful, like finished recipes and dishes. But with Have a Go, you get to see all the beauty of, whisking eggs and what that looks like, and adding flour into something, or melting butter, like all these beautiful processes behind creating a dish, or, a salami. And especially salami, I was a bit hesitant about what shooting raw meat might look like, especially sausages. And it is really beautiful and I'm really proud of it. And, Yana was all for it, and I was probably the one that was a bit hesitant behind, there's a bit of equipment involved and I want people to be able to make the recipes quite easily at home, because I do heaps of testing. And then, just to, see how it's been received and people are really happy, and it's really nice, like people are actually making these things. So I love publishing, and it's just another aspect of the food world that I'm really enjoying.
What is it that you like about making charcuterie? What is your favourite part of it?
I really enjoy, especially with this last issue, the primary produce. So like that pork belly that we were using was incredible. The fat marbling was amazing. So I enjoyed that. And then the alchemy behind going through a process and then, a bit of salt, a bit of thyme and fermenting. And then you end up with something completely different that tastes completely different. So it's the same with cheese making. It's that whole process of you don't have to do very much. As long as you create the environment, that thing will just do what it's meant to. And I really enjoy the purity of that, especially in charcuterie it's so basic. It's salt, pretty much salt, thyme, temperature, and a beautiful piece of meat. So as long as you're getting something really high quality, your end product's just going to be elevated and completely different. So it's so much fun to see.
Are there any tips that you can give on what it takes to make great salami?
So choosing really good meat, toasting your spices is it's really beneficial. So toasting, fennel seeds or chili, things like that. Working really cleanly, because as you do start to make more and more charcuterie and you start to taste it, you can really taste when things have gone slightly wrong. They're still edible and safe to eat, but you do pick up on what's happened with the temperature. It picks up a different flavor profile if it's a little bit warmer or if it's a bit cooler. So paying attention to, once you feel comfortable in making something and you know your steps, just being really clean and make it consistent, which I think a lot of people don't think, a degree or two will matter, but it does.
Future food systems is something that you're still doing at the moment. What do you see yourself doing in the future? Will charcuterie be part of that? Have you had thoughts about what's beyond this?
I guess we got our extension, which we were hoping to get with the house. So we're there until April next year, which is great. And it has been like quite a consuming project, and it's been difficult to think past it, because you do have to just live in the moment at the house when you're looking after animals and gardening. But I do look forward to, I guess, using animals again, like whole animal butchery. I think will be the only way I'll ever cook. And I'm looking forward to using dairy again, because I love making cheese. But I definitely in the future want to be more involved with the farming aspect of food. And I do really enjoy testing recipes and perfecting them and then sharing it with people. I think, there's so much to learn, and don't necessarily need to keep it to myself. Or I like the idea of sharing ideas, and especially around what we've been doing. That's been the main focus of Future Food System, is just to get the message out. And we're chefs, so we're not the best at doing that, but we're trying really hard to, diversify in ways to make people know that they have the power to make a change. So I'm hoping, in the future, just to do more of that.
Well, Jo, you're an inspiration, and we've loved having you on the Crackling today to hear your story. And I know that you're only just getting started, and it's been extraordinary already. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.